Hey guys, Soyboy Destroyer here. Today I want to talk to you all about a topic that's very close to my heart, the Second Amendment. It should come as no surprise to you if you've watched any of my other videos that I am a passionate supporter of the right to bear arms, and I oppose all attempts by the state to legislate against that right. It is because of this that I was outraged, although unsurprised, when the tyrant-in-chief Joe Biden, declared in his State of the Union address that he wanted to ban assault weapons and high-capacity magazines. His reasons for doing so are clear. He wants to remove citizens' ability to protect themselves from an increasingly totalitarian government. But if you believe that the answer to this problem is to vote Republican, you're also mistaken. The former tyrant-in-chief and former Democrat Donald Trump supported bump stock bans and federal red flag laws. Face it, both parties are deeply anti-freedom, and if they had their way, we'd be living in the world of 1984. And if you think I'm exaggerating, let me quote directly from George Orwell. That rifle hanging on the wall of the working class flat or labourer's cottage is the symbol of democracy. It is our job to see that it stays there. Soyboy Destroy here. I've loaded up my AK-47 with plenty of red pills, and I'm ready to fire them all into your unsuspecting mouth. Prepare for action.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
I took advice on what I could or could not do. Done by the person.
A while back, the Libertarian Party made a tweet stating, "As we begin celebrating #Black History Month, let us never forget the brave Black Panthers that stood by their rights in the 60s, staunchly opposing oppressive police brutality and the Mulford Act, a gun controls bill signed by Ronald Reagan and supported by the NRA to disarm them." This tweet was immediately bombarded with comments from right-wingers who were outraged that the Libertarian Party would even suggest defending the Second Amendment rights of a left-wing group. But why wouldn't they? Let's take a moment to reflect on what the Second Amendment says. A well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but that says shall not be infringed. It does not say shall not be infringed unless the person bearing arms has political views I disagree with. This amendment appears right after the First Amendment, which defends the freedom for anybody to express their political beliefs, no matter how absurd they may be. Communism as a political ideology existed at the time the Constitution was ratified, with the word communism first being used by Victor Dupé 3 years beforehand. The Founding Fathers were believers in the right of communists to not only express their ridiculous opinions freely, but to be able to do so while owning a gun. No ifs, no buts, it's right there in the Constitution. The reason why I am so passionate about the First and Second Amendments being upheld is because the first things any totalitarian regime attempts to do when it takes power is to take away speech and arms. For some examples of this, just look at Stalin, Mao, and Hitler. Yes, I am aware that Hitler expanded gun ownership rights for Aryans, and that the gun restrictions he put in place only applied to non-Aryans. However, this fact doesn't do the gun control advocates any favors when you consider which of those two groups ended up faring better. And when you look at what the tyrannical regimes of Nazi Germany, the Soviet Union, and China ended up doing when their citizens surrendered their weaponry, you can understand exactly why the Founding Fathers saw it as necessary for American citizens to own a gun in order to protect themselves from government tyranny. But SPD, the US government has nuclear weapons. How is a gun meant to protect us from that? Well, that's why the Second Amendment says arms, not guns. It is therefore a fact that the Founding Fathers would have supported private citizens' rights to own nuclear weapons. But SPD, in those times, guns could only fire 1 or 2 rounds per minute. You can't expect the Second Amendment to apply to modern armaments. Wrong again. The idea that the Second Amendment can't apply to modern weaponry is just as ludicrous as the implication that the First Amendment can't apply to modern forms of speech. This sort of twisted logic will lead you to believe that North Korea, which has banned their citizens from having free access to the internet, is in accordance with what the Founding Fathers wanted, because the internet is too modern a form of free speech to count under the First Amendment. Furthermore, this argument is even more absurd when you consider that among the Founding Fathers were brilliant inventors such as Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin, who would have no doubt have understood that weaponry would end up developing in regards to its efficacy over time. And I should note here that I have seen many conservatives make this same argument in order to defend modern guns such as AR-15s being allowed under the Second Amendment. However, they don't seem particularly eager to defend nuclear weapons. That's just another area in which shall not be infringed doesn't seem to matter to them. Now, bear in mind that when I say this, I do not mean to imply at all that the Founding Fathers were perfect human beings and that the sole reason why we shouldn't have gun control is because they didn't want it. It is true that many, though not all, of the Founding Fathers owned slaves. Furthermore, all of the Founding Fathers were statists, although had strong disagreements over what areas they wanted the state to have control over. Although none of them wanted the state to encroach upon people's liberties to the extent that today's Republicans and Democrats do, they were all mistaken in believing that there was a necessity for any state at all. When I say that the Founding Fathers supported people's unrestricted right to own any weapons, including nuclear weapons, for any reason, I don't do this to prove that we should have that right. I only do this to prove out the hypocrisy in those who claim to care about the Constitution while supporting the violation of the Second Amendment. However, I can indeed prove that regardless of whether the Founding Fathers supported it or not, the right to bear arms, including nuclear arms, should not be infringed. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. If you don't already agree with me about the unrestricted right to bear arms, I want you to pause the video and think of some reasons why you don't agree. So I'm going to give you a moment to do that, okay? In Slovakia, the capital, of course, is Bratislava. Dublin is in Ireland, or error if you'd rather. Lisbon is in Portugal, Madrid's next door in Spain. Brussels is in Belgium, Kiev's in the Ukraine. Sofia's in Bulgaria, and while you're in the area, there's Chisinau, Moldova, and Athens in Greece. Then there's Bucharest, Romania, Tirana in Albania, and Sarajevo, Bosnia, now happily at peace. The Netherlands has Amsterdam, Malta has Valletta, Oslo's up in Norway, I suggest you take a sweater. Pristina is in Kosovo, although I am afraid it's not recognized in Serbia, so don't sing this in Belgrade. San Marino is its own one 'cause it's just a little fella. Andorra is the same except they stick on a lavella. Luxembourg and Monaco are similarly dinky. Hungary has Budapest, Finland has Helsinki, then there's Skopje, Macedonia, there's Tallinn in Estonia, Montenegro's Podgorica. I said that right, I hope. Rome, of course, in Italy, and nestled in it prettily, the Vatican, the city-state in which you'll find the Pope. Lithuania has Vilnius, and now I'm sure you're eager for the capital of Latvia, so here you go, it's Riga. Copenhagen is in Denmark, Minsk in Belarus. It was once called Belarussia, but that's fallen out of use. Now, the capital of Switzerland's a tricky one to learn. Is it Zurich or Geneva? Well, no, actually, it's Bern. Warsaw is in Poland. Why not visit it today? Prague's the Czech Republic. London's the UK. Reykjavik's in Iceland. Another very nice one. Sweden, visit Stockholm if you ever get the chance. But you should find in Liechtenstein. Vienna, home of Wittgenstein, is Austria. And Paris is the capital of France. Berlin is in Germany. Zagreb is in Croatia. We're going to ignore the ones that partly lie in Asia. So no Russia and no Kazakhstan, no Turkey, no Armenia, just Nicosia in Cyprus and Ljubljana in Slovenia. Did you think of some reasons? Okay, cool. Now, what I'm going to want you to do is to explain to me why those reasons why a private citizen shouldn't be able to own any weapon, including nuclear weapons, shouldn't apply to a government official. You see, I bet most of the reasons you thought of were stuff like, what if somebody uses nuclear weapons to nuke us all? Or, what if somebody uses guns to kill innocent people? Despite the fact that you support people such as the president having the ability to allow for exactly those things to happen, and the fact that the president has allowed for the use of both nuclear weapons and guns to kill innocent people in the past. The fact is that as desirable as a world without weapons would be, that's never going to happen. Violating the Second Amendment does not mean that weapons will not be used. All it means is that weapons will be used for whatever the state wants them to be used for. And by the way, unless you want a benevolent dictatorship of some sort, in which case we need to have an entirely different conversation to the one we're having about gun rights, because yikes! The very same people who you would not trust to own a nuclear weapon are the ones you are trusting to elect those who will. The fact is that more people owning nuclear weapons will actually decrease the likelihood of nuclear Armageddon. It's called mutually assured destruction. Nobody's going to want to nuke another person because then they'll get nuked. It's the reason that we've never had any countries dropping nuclear bombs on other countries since 1945. Even with psychopaths like Reagan, the Bushes, Clinton, Obama, Trump, and now Biden in office, the USA still never used nuclear weapons. So forgive me for thinking that the average citizen, who is undoubtedly less malevolent than those scumbags, would be willing to cause the end of life on Earth. But by the way, not only is a nuclear Armageddon never going to happen, but even if it did, it wouldn't matter. Do you know why? Because we have very clear evidence of the existence of a life beyond this one. 1 in 5 Americans say that they have encountered a ghost, and that there have been many instances of paranormal activity being caught on camera. Considering all of the evidence indicates that we'll be able to live on as ghosts, why would it matter if we all died after being nuked? Bear this in mind whenever somebody attempts to justify another encroachment of the state on our civil liberties using the excuse that people will die if we don't do it. Seatbelts. Drunk driving laws. The fact is that the scorn with which both parties hold the Second Amendment is just another instance on which they are both basically the same. Both the Republicans and the Democrats are opposed to free trade and free immigration, and both of them want to steal your money to pay for endless wars in the Middle East, bailouts for failed industries, and pointless expeditions into space, the most notable of which was when we wasted billions of dollars to get Nazis to help us land 2 dudes on a rock. Oh, I'll get to you, you sons of bitches, don't you fucking worry. But the most alarming thing on which there is bipartisan agreement with the two parties is locking people up for refusing to hand over their money, which they earned, to the government to help them with whatever restrictions on our freedoms they've decided to put in place this week. And this is ultimately why we need weapons and why the government so eagerly wants to confiscate them. Just think of how little shit you'd get from the government if you had a nuclear weapon. Are you an undocumented immigrant? You've got a nuke. Tell ICE to go fuck themselves. Are you a small business owner who's struggling to compete with endless government regulations? You've got a nuke. Tell any government bureaucrats that they can suck your big one. By big one, I mean the 700-pound B-61 nuclear bomb you have in your backyard. The fact is that when the government restricts our Second Amendment rights, it's not doing it for our protection. It's doing it for their protection. If every citizen were armed, the state would be rendered powerless, and so it should be. Say no to the Democrat-Republican duopoly and say yes to guns and nukes. And as always, stay red-pilled and go destroy a local soy boy for me. SBD out.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
I took advice on what I could or could not do.
Yeah, stop being a hypocrite. Freedom for everyone.
So, yeah. Stop inflating.
Werden bei der